All right, cantilever deck versus standard coping. I live in the Northeast United States and I am preparing for a renovation of an in-ground concrete with plaster pool. I like the look and engineering, the elimination of the expansion joint of a cantilever deck. However, the more I read, the less confident I am in it being less maintenance and a better option. The existing deck has been in place for 30 years and will be replaced. What is your recommendation on cantilever versus stone, brick, or other coping from a long-term maintenance standpoint on a pool?
So there's several parts to this question. I think I'll address first the expansion line. So one of the concerns was when you have a standard coping on a pool, whether it's a brick or any type of natural product or man-made product or a cement coping on the pool itself, on the back side of the wall, there's a joint that needs to be left between the patio and the stone, so as the patio moves, it doesn't knock the stone off. That's what that expansion joint is for, is that patio, that concrete patio is constantly moving, and if you poured directly up against that stone, it would knock those stones off into the pool. So by doing a cantilever patio, you certainly eliminate that joint because now you're pouring the concrete directly over the top of the beam of the pool. Two things happen with this. Number one, it changes the elevation in the yard, if that's a concern, because now, instead of pouring the patio 1.5 inches, at most 2 inches above the beam, which would match the back of your existing coping, you're now pouring 3.5 inches on top of the beam itself. So you have to think about where it's matching, where the elevations are matching something farther out from the pool. But secondly, you do eliminate that expansion joint. However, you create a whole new expansion joint. The wall of the pool, if my hand is the wall of the pool and this is the water, the concrete is poured over the top, but you still have an expansion joint right here. You need to allow that patio to move because that patio is going to go like this over summer and winter. As it freezes, it's going to probably tip up as it's summer, so it's going to constantly move. You have a joint right here at the top of your tile line that always is an issue. So if you think long term, that's an issue. It has to be, over time initially it's nice and clean, but over time as it moves like that, there's enough gap in there where things will migrate through. You'll start getting dirt and debris into the edge of the pool, so that joint eventually needs to be caulked because it's constantly moving, which then once you caulk it, then you're in this perpetual caulking that joint. Much like when you have the coping on the top and you butt up against it with concrete, you have a joint there that eventually needs to get caulked as well. So you're not really saving anything there. It's a very clean look. I do like that part of it, but I don't think it's really the cure-all and end-all because it depends on everything else around the pool, how the entire rest of the patio lays out. When you have just coping, you're managing coping on top of the wall. When you have an entire patio that's resting on top of the wall, no matter what's happening in that patio, you're going to see it on that front edge of the pool. So in some respects, and initially it looks really good, but in the long run, you run the risk of, as that patio moves, which it's going to, just much like your old one probably did, is you've got to think of that same thing happening right at the edge of the pool and what kind of issues that could cause. In terms of what other materials to use, there's all kinds of beautiful materials, both man-made and natural stone, that I think it's just going to be based on design. I would lead you away from brick. I would tend to lead you away from brick anyway. That was very much a fad for a number of years, but most brick copings eventually started to flake off, and there's a lot of repair long term because the brick just doesn't handle that water edge as well, and I don't know why. I don't know if it's in the manufacturing of the brick coping or if it's just inherent in the material itself, but I would tend to lead you away from brick. I love bluestone. We use a lot of bluestone in what we do. We've certainly used granite. We've certainly used a lot of different man-made products. So there's a lot of choices based on what the rest of the pool is going to look like. And my personal opinion is I would always tend to lead you away from cantilevered concrete. In the long run, in the short run, it's beautiful. In the long run, I see the challenges with it, and my advice would be find a stone and just make sure that the stone is being installed properly, because you always run the risk of that joint that's holding the stone to the concrete of the wall can always get damaged and have to deal with loose stones as well long term. But I would still, my choice would be to put a natural stone around the edge of the pool as opposed to the cantilevered concrete.